Hello everyone and welcome to Void Dwarf Studios for our Warhammer Wednesday episode. And we are going to be kicking this off with some Slaanesh Heroes. But first, a quick addendum. There was one individual who I did not mention who we actually have some rules and backstory for, which, well, is better than quite a few of the heroes that are coming out very recently for Heathen Knights of Slaanesh units. And this individual is the Lord of Pain. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say right now. He is your up and front, in-your-face, bashy hero general, who is about as subtle as the mace he carries, but he does have a funky ability which essentially means he can cause pain to units that hurt him in close combat, which is one heck of a handy trait. But until the new Heathen Knight of Slaanesh book comes out, there are a bunch of other heroes that don't have this same treatment, including the Shade Speaker, the lovely wizard lady with the smoky mirrors, who we're going to safely assume is some kind of wizard, and of course there is the gargantuan fellow who is the Glutus Orskilin, the Lord of Gluttony, who is one hell of a beautiful model, and we can quite safely assume is going to be a bit of a centerpiece in your army. We know unfortunately nothing really about either of these two models, their abilities, what they do and how they do it, including poor old Sigvold, who, as glorious as the model is, we also have no rules for as of yet. So we're going to have to wait for the Heathen Knight book to come out before we can piece that particular puzzle together. But I think at the very least for Sigvold, it's safe to say he's going to be a close combat monster, and is probably going to cause all kinds of unpleasantness to anyone who gets too close. But anyway, let's go with some people we actually know stuff about, shall we? Starting off with Shalesk, the Vengeful Allegiance. Made up of Shai Lu Tung and the Demon Monarch-esque, this pair of very dangerous individuals is quite a fun little model and quite an interesting combination. It's essentially a Demon Prince of Slaanesh, a human who has ascended to the ranks of a Demon Prince, blessed by their god basically with eternal life, and a Herald of Slaanesh who have formed an interesting partnership. Since uniting their powers, these two have become a force to be reckoned with. And do remember, this is Slaanesh we're talking about. Cooperation isn't something that comes naturally to any demon, much less Slaanesh. Sly Lutung is an interesting herald, in that she's one of the unique individuals amongst this demon breed that actually grew affection towards the various charges she led to their own destruction. A unique affection which meant she became shunned by the court of Slaanesh for growing these attachments. An odd trait for a herald, to be sure, but one that definitely served her well later on down the line. When she encountered a mortal war slave known as Esk, a fighter in the gladiatorial arenas in the gardens of Slaanesh, caught her eye, the herald decided that this mortal had even greater heights to achieve. And thanks to Esk's new-founded patron in the form of Slyel, it allowed him to eventually, through plenty of blood, carnage and violence, ascend to the rank of a demon prince, only to be dismissed by the other demon courtiers himself as a former mortal. Sly and Esk took revenge on those that shunned them, combining their brute strength and cunning to form a deadly tag team. Having now basically butchered their way through most of the individuals who even thought about having a bad word to say about them, they decided that this deadly partnership was worth sticking with. And so, Sly and Esk decided to combine their names to represent their new joined union. They now refer to themselves as Slyesk. But this terrifying tag team are capable of carving their way across the battlefield with relatively straightforward ease. And alarmingly so, in fact. In addition to this, they are able to buff and assist their other demon units into even greater rages and frenzies. In Age of Sigmar, this pair, as they currently stand, have 9 wounds, 8 move, 10 bravery and a 4-up save, and in total they have a basic stat line of 12 attacks. And this individual can be a general in your unit with a funky command ability. And on top of all that, they can cast magic. This pair really is a close combat monster. And from one unlucky courtier of Slaanesh who was shunned by the rest, to another, known as the Mask of Slaanesh, a herald of Slaanesh who has lost favour with her patron god. At one time, this was a favoured dancer and chief handmaiden to the Prince of Pleasure itself, dazzling and enrapturing those around her with displays of acrobatic skill. However, during one of the Great Wars, known as the Eternal Game, essentially a time when the Chaos Gods decide to fight amongst themselves, Tzeentch tricked Slaanesh into an unwinnable situation where it was battling both Khorne and Nurgle, which resulted in a very humiliating defeat. In the aftermath, the Mask, believing it being her duty to try and ease the heart of her god, decided to try and do one of her most energetic and stimulating dances. However, the Prince of Pleasure, whose pride had been sorely hurt at this point, was only filled with bitterness upon seeing this, interpreting the dance and the energy and the movement of the Mask as being some kind of form of mockery. Obviously, this wasn't the intended translation that the Mask was hoping for, and Slaanesh, in a rage, cast her out of the courtroom and threw her into the mortal realms, cursing her to dance forevermore. Ever since this point, the Mask has danced all across the mortal realms, and whenever wanton souls indulge in their senses, these excesses overcoming their own restraints, the Mask appears, leading them to a dance of doom, where they are more than likely going to get stabbed up by her, or at the very least end up in a situation where stabbing and a bit of soul eating is in order. The Mask does come to help out Slaanesh armies from time to time, appearing and then disappearing, hoping one day to earn her way back into the courtroom of Slaanesh, where she truly wishes to be. This unfortunate and unloved individual is essentially a very, very, very good close combat character, with a very respectable basic 6 attacks with her ravaging claws. This individual is quite the terrifying foe to fight. Even with a 5-up save, those 5 wounds will mean that she'll last long enough to cause some real damage. And she has a nifty little ability that basically means she gets to ignore wounds on a 4+. At least that is how she currently stands on her war scroll. Obviously this is all subject to change, but really the Mask is just a really, really fast, really good unit to bounce around in combat, where she can basically fly in, bump into a unit, kill it, and then potentially pile into another unit, bump it, and then kill it. But essentially, the Mask is a character who excels when fighting against things with a slower movement value. The slower the movement, the better stats they get. As her war scroll currently stands, she gets to re-roll her hits and wounds if the unit has a movement of 5 or less, essentially reflecting the fact that the Mask can dance and move so fast that the slower you are, the more times you get punched in the gut. And last but by no means least, one of the big bruisers of the Slaaneshi faction, at least for the moment, Shalaxi Hellbane, the Monarch of the Hunt. Known to be one of the most powerful keeper of secrets, this Slaanesh greater demon is Slaanesh's chosen weapon against the other greater demons of chaos. A perfectly honed fighter who blended their senses and skill with the magical power and speed of a keeper of secrets, Hellbane is known to have slain thousands of rivals to the Dark Prince itself. Shalaxi is Slaanesh's instrument of death. If an enemy warlord raises the ire of the Dark Prince, or if some individual gets on Slaanesh's nerves, a mental pulse will burst within Shalaxi's soul, giving the Hellbane an all-consuming quest, an all-consuming desire, need, want to go and end the life of this individual. Shalaxi's specially created senses, exaggerated to absurd degrees, almost like an antenna, scanning the horizon looking for its prey, the demon's head will perceive senses and sounds on multiple spectrums, giving it the ability to see through mist, detect the smell of spells just from close proximity, hear the sound of a mortal's heartbeat from miles away, taste cowardice in the air. This demon's sensory levels are just beyond ridiculous at this point. Any normal human with this level of sensitivity would basically be gibbering wreck on the floor. But with these incredible senses and it being able to discern the information and use it effectively, Hellbane can follow a prey's trail, allowing it to also peer through the realms, see through the warp, and leap out at its particular opponent and make short work of it in most cases. The only possible safe place that anyone could possibly go to avoid this individual is maybe the ocean, where the Idoneth Deep can make their home. And even then, that's a very strong maybe, and that's only because of the various magical protections that the Idoneth Deep can use to keep themselves hidden. Kings, dragons, greater demons, tyrants, it doesn't matter. Salaxi has conquered and killed all of these. Over time, Salaxi became accompanied by packs of fiends and beasts, in thrill-seeking joyous abandon racing towards their prey, as these fiends are drawn to such strong emotions and the all-consuming quest in Salaxi's soul to end the life of this person who has upset the Prince of Pleasure. That brings quite a lot of fiends behind it. But Salaxi is not some secret assassin. Salaxi does not use stealth to fight. It will openly challenge its prey, and using magic it will create a challenge that they cannot refuse, no matter how cowardly they may be, and they will fight one-on-one to the death. It has been rumoured by the Hedonites who follow Salaxi that one day the spear of this great keeper of secrets will pierce the heart of a god beast and prove the supremacy of chaos over the realms once and for all. That hasn't happened yet, but considering the fact that Slaanesh is now beginning to re-emerge in the mortal realms, then maybe that's not too far off. Every aspect of this keeper of secrets fighting style is perfectly countered to destroy Slaanesh's rivals. Salaxi, in fact, owes its existence to an outpouring of desire for Slaanesh to defeat Khorne in matters of martial prowess, to lay low the bloodthirsters in single combat, and essentially make a mockery of their rage-filled violence. The long spear, whose Salaxi is famous for wielding, is a weapon that sings and confuses those around it. Even the most skilled of combatants find it nearly impossible to dodge the incoming strikes from this spear. Even bloodthirsters in close combat have terrible times trying to avoid this thing. And even if you manage to get close within the spear, Salaxi has a living whip that will wind up, crack, and grapple the enemy, allowing Salaxi to just throttle it and then continuously stab it. Salaxi has impaled Lords of Change before they can even cast their spells, turned greater unclean ones into blubbering heaps of green goo, and even outfought airborne bloodthirsters just by leaping into the sky and stabbing them through the chest. There is one particular demon who Salaxi Hellbane has a particular hatred for, and that's Scarbrand, a bloodthirster so powerful it once sought out to defeat Khorne itself. A very confusing thing, considering that its power comes from Khorne, therefore trying to kill Khorne was a bit of a futile effort. But these two individuals have fought each other twice to a draw, each one at the end of the fight having to retreat in order to avoid dying. And Scarbrand is quite the monster, so against any old poor human mortal, they really don't stand that much of a chance. Salaxi is, of course, a keeper of secrets, meaning that all the lovely things a keeper of secret has, it gets to stack on top of, including the ability to have an irresistible challenge stopping anything from moving away, and causing damage if you try to move away. This is more of a one-on-one keeper of secret, shall we say. Though more than capable of wiping out various units, it's only got a maximum of 3 attacks, which doesn't sound like much until you consider the fact that the damage it does is ridiculously high. Just as an example, its 2 attacks with its claws when unwounded do 5 damage apiece, the spear Soul Piercer doing an additional d6. And when you're fighting against heroes, that d6 just becomes an automatic 6. And with a stat line of 14 wounds, 14 move, 4 up save and 10 bravery, this is a monster of a beast to fight in close combat. I would personally choose to make sure you go killing heroes with this thing, that is exactly what it's for, but don't let it wade too deep into massive horde units. You're going to find it struggling simply due to its lack of attacks. And that's all for the moment, everyone. I have now covered the Slaanesh units, at least with the information we have at this present moment in time. Maybe when the Hedonite Slaanesh book comes out, I can come back and revisit this. But for now, I'm going to call this little series of videos finished. I hope you've all enjoyed them. Please feel free to like, comment and subscribe, and I hope to hear from you all soon. Take care, everyone.